Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. I'm your host, Erika Washington, and Nkenge and I talked for quite a while when we recorded our conversation, and I wanted you all to get as much of the conversation as possible. And so here's now part 2 that I think you'll enjoy as much as we enjoyed chatting with each other, and as much as I know you enjoyed part 1. So thanks again for listening. How is it navigating parenting boys who are, you said 16 and 9?
If I never tell nobody what to do with their ovaries, but if you plan on birthing or adopting or whatever way you want to get your babies, I would suggest you do it back to back. It is like having an only child twice, but also I think I can see for both of them where what is better for them and what might be like unfair. Like because I was 20 something when I had one and I was 30 when I had one. And it's like you can't, as a mom, get in one space, right? Like if I had a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, we could sit down. This is playtime. This is our time. This is whatever. But I got one that's like, hey, you gonna take me on this college tour? And the other one is like, you want to be a dinosaur? And I'm like, being a dinosaur and looking at colleges at the same time. And that kind of multitasking is just so much more draining, and the focus is split. So they're both getting like a piece of focus. You know what I mean? Or I'm making a determination. Okay, we got to focus in on you right now, or we got to focus in on you. And just their developmental needs even in the house, right? Like, what do I need to have going on? What music can I play? What conversations can I have? And then they're both exposed to things that they would not be. Like sometimes my 9-year-old is hearing a conversation with the 16-year-old about attraction or how he's talking to girls or something that he might not need to hear, but we all in the same house. What we gonna do about it, right? And then sometimes with the 9-year-old is like, okay, you stand up too late, so we shutting the house down at 10 o'clock on the weekends because you don't know how to put yourself to bed on the weekends. And then that's making the 16-year-old have to now be quiet or go figure out, their own space. So it's definitely, I think, a lot harder. The perks is the 6-year-old, when he does give me a couple hours of free childcare, when we get in the pool, I don't have to get in the pool. He know how to swim. He take his brother out there. He do it, So there are some moments like that, but I've tried to be, because of the age gap, tried to make sure I don't make my older child, the built-in babysitter. But I love when he just decides to do it on his own.
So I want to ask you about navigating through a new space as somebody who identifies as a lesbian. Like, is there a difference in how you see your life in Atlanta versus Detroit? Is it easier? Is it, I don't know. Is there a difference at all? Do you even feel a difference?
No, there's a big difference. And I think that when folks think about like coming out stories, I think I also thought myself when I was younger before I came out. And when I hear folks think of coming out as this one-time mega event in your life, like came out, everybody know. But that's not true. Everybody don't know you yet. You don't know everybody you gonna know yet, right? And so not only I am a lesbian, but I'm feminine. Therefore, the assumption, I'm feminine with kids and a baby mama belly. So the assumption is I'm straight. So I
love that baby mama belly.
Definitely got the baby mama belly. No support underwear, nothing, just in a maxi dress. So I think that this is the thing. I am very conscious of people assuming I'm heterosexual. And in my attempt to be an honest person, it's like I have to combat somebody else's assumption, because walking into a space and if we on a play date for our kids, we don't need to bring up partners or attractionality or anything like that. But I get in these positions where it's like, yeah, if you want to come, bring the kids and your husband or whatever, then it's like, okay, I'm not lying, but if I let this continue, I feel like I'm lying. And so as an adult, it's one thing for me, I have to come out all the time. I have to come out and I find ways to just hurry up and drop it in conversations too, because what I wouldn't want to do, if I don't try to challenge people's politics. If you don't hang out with queer people, with lesbians, whatever, let me just drop it on you before we start getting too cool. And then you have to be uncomfortable or make a decision, or we have to face that. So first conversation, we talking about Starbucks. Yes. And when I went with my girlfriend, so you can now figure out what you want to do with that. But in Detroit, again, I'm there so much, I wasn't having to come out. People would even come out for me, right? Like if I'm in a group setting and somebody says that, the person they know might check them like, nah, she don't. Here, nobody is doing that. And so having to come out again and again and again, it's almost like being 15 back in high school in Detroit and coming out, having to do it in a way that makes sense. Doesn't seem like I'm weirdly dropping it for no reason. And then watching for the real response, because there's a polite response and then there's does my baby stop getting invited to stuff? So I don't necessarily worry about people reacting to me about being a lesbian. I worry about secondhand homophobia toward my child. And so, and furthermore, most of the established queer parent groups are usually white moms or white parents. If it's not just moms, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it, but if it's white families. So then I get into in Detroit, I was never in no Black lesbian mom group, but that was a good majority of my friend group. We just came out together, came up in the clubs together, started families, and that was that. I don't have that here, and so then I have to make decisions of who is my child hanging with, right? Because if we're gonna go to a safe space where other families look like his, because they're gay families, they're probably gonna be white. And then if you go into Black spaces, that can often be some version of homophobic, but it's Black and he needs to be around Black folks. So I have to make those kind of decisions and constantly kind of like wait for a moment to come out, which is exhausting in a conversation because I'm not really getting to know you or hearing you right now. I'm just waiting to kind of see what tip you about to be on. And to further that, I'm a lesbian and I'm also Muslim. I grew up Muslim. I identify as a Muslim woman. Like Ramadan starts Monday night. And at home, I knew where I could go to celebrate with other Muslim folks who they weren't in love with the fact that I was an out lesbian, but they knew me too long for it to be an issue. So we just didn't talk about that. Out here, I can't play it like that. So I know that this is, for me, it's going to be a very lonely Ramadan. It's going to be a very like isolated moment for me that I'm not used to experiencing.
So how do you expect to navigate that?
So right now, I haven't thought about the day to day. Now, the Eid celebration, the break and fast, the end of Ramadan, what I am probably going to do is just cook and prepare by myself and invite my folks out here who are not Muslim, but will come to eat food and celebrate. So I just can't imagine having to eat and not having a house full of people and not cooking. So I just will still do that and be surrounded by folks who it might just be a learning situation or teaching moment about Eid and about Ramadan. It won't be, that particular community setup that I'm used to. Some foods I don't know how to make. I just won't get this year. That type of thing. But I do hope to me, I think the internet provides a safe space where I can just flat out say that. Do y'all know a space for this and that, And I hope at some point to find it. It ain't gonna happen before Monday night. But yeah, my only kind of thought process around it is I'll just invite people over. I'll still have that kind of community. It just won't be Muslim sisters.
Why do you think that there aren't, or there are probably very few, if you haven't been able to find any queer or LGBTQIA spaces of Black folks who are parents to have those sort of parental play dates? Why do you think it's because there are plenty of queer Black folks and plenty of them have children. I see them on the internet all the time, but I know as not something that I've had to think about in my life. I haven't actually gone to like purposely look for them. So I just have an assumption that they are there, but you're saying otherwise. And so it makes me wonder why aren't they collectively getting together to have these safe spaces to raise their children?
Yeah, I guess there's so many answers for that. And I want to say, I see a lot of young Black lesbian and gay couples, a lot who are accessing artificial insemination, surrogacy, those options. And they are younger than I am. I think that many of my homegirls are folks of my generation, folks of my age. A lot of folks were, and this is me like generalizing, they maybe were not out, maybe didn't know what that was or whatever. They had babies in boyfriend girlfriend situations or husband wife situations, heterosexual situations. Came to find out who they were, and then later, okay, they had already had these babies before they started same gender dating. I think in those situations, a lot of harm has been done in families. People used to call CPS on folks for being gay. That was it. Like, it's been used in divorce. If you divorce me, I'm going to tell your Christian mama that you dating women now and you kicked out the family. So people have used that in ways that have been very harmful to people. People have lost their children, not being able to fight exes or families or whatever because of their identities and things like that. And I also think it was a class issue, a financial class issue, right? So I always tell every Black gay person that want to have kids that I come in contact with, I paid $1,732 out of pocket to get pregnant. That is the most that I paid. I had good insurance, but also there's an assumption because we hear stories about folks battling infertility issues, and you hear stories about, oh, I paid $30,000, $40,000, $80,000 trying to get this baby. That is because those stories are so unfortunate, but also magnificent in the fact that you would want a child that much. That's the narrative that gets put around, and then people just assume, well, I ain't got $80,000 for no baby, so I just can't have one, when they're not understanding that story is particular to somebody's particular set of health issues. If you don't have any of those health issues and you just simply don't have sex with men, in my case, I didn't pay very much. Sperm is very cheap. I think the specimens are like $170, and which when I told my mama that, she said, you still could have got a discount, but it's not very expensive. I think that
Black on Facebook Marketplace.
It's the bar downstairs anywhere.
It's been giving it out anyway.
Absolutely. But I think that unfortunately, even Black folks who are not experiencing poverty, who are middle class, upper middle class, any of that, most of us have had some experience with being broke and being poor. And we make assumptions about what we cannot afford. Sometimes I see it with traveling, with pregnancies, all that type of stuff. And so I think a lot of Black queer folk maybe felt priced out of getting pregnant in the way that I did, or having a baby in the way that I did. And so because of that, they're dealing with this other aspect, right? Where they may not consider themselves a queer mom. Like, I'm a lesbian person, but I wasn't gay when I had my baby, or I wasn't living that way or whatever when I had my baby. So I think there's some identity issues tied up in that. And then I also think Black folks generally, we, for protective reasons, keep like a lot of our business in the house. It hasn't been as safe for us as white folks to just talk about our journeys, talk about our experience with motherhood, what we did, why we did it. And so it almost Black motherhood can in some ways operate in this form of secrecy that's really protection, because we can't just talk about stuff that we did. I might be at a white queer parenting group and they'll tell you, like in Michigan, you can't use a surrogate. And they'll just openly say, yeah, and I went to Ohio and we paid her and this and that and talk about it. Technically that borderlines, illegal in some ways. My Black butt better not be talking like that, or I'm not going to be as comfortable talking like that, even though there's a low chance of anything happening. And so I say all that to say, I think that any gathering that has a potential to not feel safe for Black folks, we're not going to have, especially when it comes to our kids or making them not feel safe. On top of that, we deal with a lot of open homophobia within families, within communities. And a lot of us don't want our kids to have to advocate for us, to have to be the gay family kid or whatever. And so we don't put them in those spaces. We separate. This is what mommy does over here, but this is not your family. This is not a tale of two mommies. You know what I mean? And so we separate in those ways. So I think that the same way there are few services for Black gay people in general, fewer drop-in centers, fewer foster care services, fewer any of that. The parenting services we are probably still just gathering in the ways that we always have, in those very informal, this is my homegirl, this is my friend, we know each other, we all going to the park next Saturday, versus these established groups for the kids. It's just been so much trauma and lack of access.
So this makes me think about, your activism, and also makes me think about, obviously, the conversation around reproductive rights and reproductive health have been front and center for a few years now. And most recently in, your now neighboring state, Alabama, they are what felt like wanting to hold embryos hostage from folks and tell them that they're children, even if they aren't implanted and all of that. And so thinking about that aspect of folks who may not, they might be somewhere in between you as far as being able to easily conceive at a lower end versus somebody who has a host of medical issues and will require to spend a lot of money. They may have just frozen their eggs, because that's also a thing that, some folks are doing, especially folks who feel like they just aren't ready to have children yet, and they have that privilege to do. I feel as though, that'll also add to the scariness of how do I start my family and what do I do? And then what can I say out loud, to folks? Do you think about those things as you are working on your activism?
So I think about those things a lot, and it just, for me, what I know, what I feel like a lot of people know, is when I see these laws and certain things, these policies, these bans, all of that, anything dealing with reproductive rights, you cannot stop any of it. None of it can be legally stopped. We talking about abortion, pregnancy, the range of it. The only thing you can do is make it messy. That's all you can do. If some states are talking about banning artificial insemination, right? When I wanted my babies, I wanted my babies. You can tell me nothing else in this world. And if artificial insemination was banned, I would have tricked somebody's son. I'm having this baby. We would have figured it out. And what would have happened is I would have took off on them and never contacted them again, right? And that's an unnecessary mess. We could just ask a nice nurse, a nice man to make a distribution, a nice nurse to come in and handle it. Nobody's life is disrupted. We don't have a kid 30 years from now saying, you lied to me and kept me from my dad. We don't have, on the other end of that, we don't have women trying to do procedures on themselves and hurting themselves. A kid, we don't have just all of this mess. And when I see these fights, what I see is somebody wanting to be right so much to the degree that they don't mind who dies in the process of doing home procedures, who messes up the life of a kid, who throws off family legacies, who takes away none of that. I'm right, you wrong. And I don't care who get hurt in it, because my body is actually not up for any, my body won't be harmed in it. I'm just arguing this kind of abstract thing, essentially, because it's nothing to do with my family. It's how I look at when I see lawmakers and activists too arguing it. And for me, I always tell people, because my religion will come up in conversations with folks and things like that, I have personal opinions about things and I have political opinions about things. They don't have to align, because my political opinion is based on what is accessible for free choice. You don't have to access the free choice, right? It is so much, like, for example, this is not reproductive health, but I don't eat pork. I don't care about who sell pork in a restaurant. I don't feel pressure to eat pork. I don't feel like my kids shouldn't be exposed to the pork. None of that. We don't eat pork. Now, I know my 16-year-old will smash down the pepperoni pizza when he's not around me, but he don't eat it in my presence, right? And so it's like, people should be able to exercise their choice. In that exercising of choice, there should be a lot of diversity and a lot of thought, because it all goes to your personal life. I hate when we get into the arguments of, well, what if there's an assault? Or what if somebody's life is on the line? Or what if somebody's sick? Or will this person, because we don't have to validate our sickness or our choices with none of that.
And it's always usually traumatic ones too. It's like so something traumatic had to happen in order for then, oh, well, that might be okay if.
Yeah. And it's one-off case where this very traumatic thing happened. And at this point, it's like, do y'all just want to read nonfiction books for fun? Because we don't have to do this like as a political act. Leave the options open, right? That's my thing. I'll fight for things that I have fought for access to birth control. I ain't using none. I don't care about it. I don't even educate myself on birth control, but I know that some people use it, and I know that that's their choice. So my activism stretches me to be very committed to free choice, but also to get into these conversations, to knowledge of like what power is, how it looks, and what folks are willing to do to execute power in households and bodies that they will never even interact with. That to me is the psychology of it that keeps me very, very like intrigued and in this fight, because there's no way, we all know based on history showing us, you're not going to stop abortions. You're going to make them unsafe. You're not going to stop people from getting pregnant. You're going to have more babies who don't have a household they could have been brought into properly, right? It's certain things that you just cannot stop. And we know that. So instead of allowing for free choice to happen in these responsible ways, we're okay with attempting to stop something that we absolutely cannot put a ban on. So for my own personal activism, and any folks that I talk to about joining fights, I never get into personal debates about stuff. I don't care what your personal belief in. If I'm not dating you or you're not my sister and we having this argument, I don't care how you feel about abortion. I really don't care how they feel about abortion, for real. But I do care about you wanting other folks to be able to access what they need, because we all do something somebody feel like we shouldn't be doing or shouldn't have access to. I don't care if it's acrylic nails. I had a man argue with me about how acrylic nails are the reason Black women are not homeowners. Everybody got an opinion about something. And that's okay. If we live in a world where we can make our choice, it even makes the debates friendlier and the debates where we're able to learn something from one another. But when you start to restrict people's actual movement, choices, and bodies, now you're just creating safety issues. That's all you're really going to be able to do.
Yes, there's that saying that everyone has opinions the same way everybody has other things, other holes in their body.
Yep.
So give me a little background of how you got into the work of activism, and because you said you've always pretty much worked for nonprofits. Mm-hmm. Was it an interest? Was it on purpose, or did you stumble into this lane?
A little bit of both. So whenever I've been asked that a lot in different ways, and I always think about this moment. I was at my granddad's house. He had this little bitty box TV on a kitchen table, and me and my brother would watch while he was cooking. So we're watching Wheel of Fortune, and they spinning the wheel, and you can win $1 million just by spinning the wheel. And then when the commercial came on, it was one of those 30 cents a day can feed this poor, hungry, bloated African child. And I remember, and at that age, I thought $1 million was like just the most money in the world. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, if we got $1 million on the wheel, it seemed like we got the 30 cents. So what I didn't realize was what I was learning in that moment was that we have a bad distribution of wealth in this country. That's the issue. Like homelessness, hunger, none of that is a real thing. The redistribution of wealth and resources is the issue. I knew that. I didn't know those words yet, but I knew something wasn't right. I knew we had $1 million to play with, but we needed 40 cents to keep these babies from dying. That was weird to me. So I think that actually like would have put me into this work at some point in my life. However, I came out, I was outed in high school. I was 14 or 15, and I found this place called, the adults in my life found this place in Detroit called the Ruth Ellis Center. So Ruth Ellis she passed, but she was a Black lesbian woman, and she died when I was in high school. She was like 101 then. And so at one point in Detroit, she used to open her home to homeless queer youth and host dance parties to help people pay their rent and just all different type of stuff. So she was an activist in this very informal way. And there's a center in Detroit called the Ruth Ellis Center that is in her honor. It's a drop-in center. And I went there. That was my first time being around. It's a bunch of gay people. And I was just so in love. I just wanted to go to the parks and the clubs and the parties. And I was sneaking in the clubs and doing all of this stuff. And what really, really helped me, I ran into, or one of the women who worked there was connected. And these older, at that point in my life, because I'm 15, they probably like 32. But at that point, these older Black lesbian women
everybody seemed older then.
Yeah, like they were like so old. They were 30. So they took an interest in me in a way that was like, what do you want to do with your life? Because you can't just be gay. Like, you got to do more stuff than that. It was like, but that's all I wanted to do. I was so excited to just like not be persecuted and not it be a negative thing. It was like, there are other gay people in the world that exist. And they were like, yeah, a lot of gay people. Now what? Now what you gonna do? And I want to say this because I think this is very, very important about mentor relationships with youth. None of these folks were ever inappropriate with me. None of them were ever, because I have so many people who I know who their mentor relationships, straight, gay, whatever, failed them because somebody attempted to take advantage of a younger person who's in a mentorship role. And that harms people a lot. And I just wanted to name that right quick. I think mine is so beautiful because there was never one point where there was any of that. And so I was able to have this like band of aunties who were really like doing stuff for me and forcing me to look at which college I wanted to go and figure out what I wanted to do. So I'm doing all this stuff, and they constantly, hey, you're going to sign up for this, you're going to do this, showing me these programs. And there's a program called, or an activist group called GLSEN, Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educational Network. So at the time, they were starting these GSAs, Gay Straight Student Alliances within schools. And I was sent to one of their conferences. I don't even know which one of my mentors hooked me up with them, but they taught me how to be an activist. They taught me how to establish a GSA, and they taught me kind of like what you could do legally, what you could not do, why your school could say yes, why they could say no. And I was so interested in this ability to be able to, like me at 15, tell my school what they finna do and what they not finna do. I was so excited about that. So I went back home. The conference was in Chicago. I went back home to Detroit, started the first GSA in the Detroit public school. And from there, it just continued. After that, I'm just like at any at any thing, any protest, any whatever. And I kept going deeper and deeper into the work. I started off doing a lot of work within the LGBTQ community. And then I can remember the moment I was like, yeah, I'm a step back. I was doing a lot of activism around equal marriage equality. And I remember being in a room one day with a bunch of folks who were fighting for this. And it was the first time I was ever in a room with this many white men with money, who had the same problem or had the same issue I had. And that was so weird. And I remember thinking, like, at that time, I'm fighting for gay folks to have access to medical care, to housing, because queer homeless youth is always one of the highest rates of homelessness, which then also gives way to a higher rate of people making decisions to end their own life. And so all of this stuff is what we fighting for on top of marriage equality. And I'm in a room, and it was something in me, and I just remember hearing these white men talk. And to me, what I was hearing, whatever they were saying, what I was hearing was, you're not going to treat me like Black people. I might be gay. I am still a white man. Chill out. And I got up and I was like, you know what? I'm not fighting for marriage equality. White people got this one. Y'all good. Y'all should be nice and energetic and rested up from not having to fight for everything else. Y'all got this. And I walked away from that fight, and I started doing more work, specifically within Black communities. And marriage equality passed, like I knew it would, because too many white men were disenfranchised, and we're not going to have that in this America. and so I started doing work just in the Black community around education, homelessness, education and homelessness and trafficking. And then I'm sure you remember this. Corinne, the young mother from Baltimore who was shot and killed by the police while holding her 5-year-old son in her arms.
Yeah, I do remember that.
New videos released tonight in the fatal shooting of an armed Baltimore County woman killed during a 6-hour standoff with police.
This new video shows the intense moments leading up to that deadly encounter.
Just for anybody who want to know what I'm doing.
Videotaping an apparent shotgun in her hand, Corinne Gaines records herself holed up in her apartment with her 5-year-old son.
Baltimore County's top prosecutor says the shooting death of Corinne Gaines at the hands of police was justified. Gaines was armed with a shotgun during the standoff. Tonight, her family is expressing their outrage.
I remember being so just sad and confused and didn't know what was happening. I remember I could get this tattoo of her name, because I went and did some work in Baltimore around everything that was happening. But anyway, what happened for me, a lot of Black men who I knew, and this is not an attempt to drag Black men, this was just my experience, who I knew was doing work. We were doing a lot of work around ending incarceration together and stuff like that. They were the Black men that, I want my woman to be like Asada and blah, blah, blah. And when this happened, they were talking about she should have shut up. Why would she do all that? That she should have shut up from a brother who had Asada as his profile picture. Had Angela Davis as his profile picture. I was heated. And it wasn't just him. And I did what you don't do. I read the comments. And it was several brothers that I had organized with that I was ready to put my life on the line around this police interaction and how they were treating Black men specifically, but also Black women. And I was like, oh, I'm not organizing with y'all. Ugh. We cannot be cool, because when black women, because we create boy children, female children, whatever, I feel like have a relationship to when we see somebody get harmed, we just think about our brothers, our kids. I think our kids is really like the pull for a lot of things. And it's not gender specific, right? But we will fight for Black men, we'll fight for Black women, whatever. But when I saw that sexism come out about an issue that I knew Black men thought were wrong, I know they have an issue with the way police interact with Black bodies. but I didn't realize it was specific to Black male bodies until that happened. And that was so devastating for me, but also scary to know that I had been putting myself on the front line from somebody who thinks I should shut up for real.
Why do you think that there is such a divide in Black men and Black women when it comes to activism? Because you're not the first to say that. And I've experienced it myself in a lot of different ways of just wanting to talk about, I think we were talking about affordable childcare and equal pay. And well, you need to get behind, what's going on with the Black men, and you need to do X, Y, and Z before we worry about all of that. And I'm like, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And it's not a oppression Olympics that we are playing, but at the same time, it feels that way in a lot of spaces that are supposed to be safe.
So this is my personal theory, and I use it with gay white men. I use it with white women activism and Black men. If we are all oppressed, right? We all in this box. Some of us are if we in a cell, some of our bunks is up and it's by the window. You see a little bit of the light, you know that it's right there. You experience it, right? White women, so white men are the power source, or who holds the power, generally speaking, in America. White women have that racial tie. Black men have that gender tie. So they get to peek out the window and still see it. Black women, before we start adding anything else to that identity, just those two things. As a Black woman, you're a Black woman before you're born, once nature decides whatever, you don't have a tie in any way. So you don't get that audacity to say, no, I know it's some freedom out there because I saw it out the window. I do have access to the window. I might not have access to the door. We don't have either. So we're like, let's just all be okay. Let's take turns going to see the window. Let's figure out how to make it equitable, because we don't have any tie, no internal identity tied to that power source. We're naturally thinking about it in community, because that's as high as we can see. We can't get up to the window yet. And so it's my belief that then all you can do as a Black woman, for the most part, well, not for the most part, all you do is add to your identity, right? So you're born a Black woman or a Black girl, a Black person at that point. And then you start to add stuff. I was born a Black girl, but then I was also born to a poor woman who lived in an inner city. Then I grew up and became a mother, and all of these things that added to the identity, but I was already not at the window and no steps to it. So all of this stuff kind of adds on, and it forces me from down here. I'm not looking out the window toward freedom. I'm looking around toward the people. So that's all I'm caring about. But folks who get that taste of freedom, and I understand it. I always tell people jokingly, but not jokingly, if I were a white woman, I would be the worst kind of white woman in the world. I would not fight for nobody's rights. I would feel like everybody who is in college did so of their own hard work. And my child did not get any racial nepotism. Billy has been doing his job since preschool.
He's been pulling up his bootstraps since I first put him on his body.
And I would believe it, right? Because when my sons do something now, I don't ever question if anything played a role in it. Ableism, the fact that they light skinned, none of that. If I sit down and think about it, I know it's there. But I don't. When my baby come home with that award, you did that, baby. I know that if I were a white woman, I would be horrible. I might donate to like wildlife or something, but that would be it. I wouldn't be an activist. And so I say that to say, I think that because Black women, generally speaking, don't aspire to power in the way of being connected to the power source of white maleness. We don't have it through race or gender. We have to make what's better for us as a community, not this aspiration of power. And like I said, when I talked about gay men with the marriage equality, I think with them, it's like, well, I'm still white. With white women, it's like, I'm still white. I might be a woman, but you're not going to treat me like no Black woman. And I think with Black men, it's like, yeah, I'm Black, but I'm still a man, and men run stuff around here. So us not having that one identity to lean in and be like, I might be this, but I'm still this. It's like, nah, you this and you that. So there's no kind of space to build up that kind of audacity to be for self in that way.
I appreciate that answer because I actually had never thought about it in that way, in that proximity to power or that access to that window. And I think that is, probably, as you said, one of the main reasons why we are trying to connect everybody, and we're not just necessarily thinking about ourselves, because how are we supposed to move through this world if we don't have some sort of collective sort of unity? And that makes me want to bring back up the earlier conversation about giving Black folks a pass. So you talked about this particular person not necessarily giving you the information or the resources that you needed or could have needed if you were indeed a homeless parent searching for resources, and then also not talking to her but not reporting it up. You didn't escalate it in any sort of way, partially maybe because she was a Black woman. How do you see that also in the activism world and in the political world? Do you think that we give those same sort of passes without and not doing enough calling out or even calling in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say in the political world, one of the things is I just find it hard, and not just me, when you see a Black woman who might have political views who you disagree with, if we could have that conversation, then we would have that conversation. But what happens is, before you can say, I really like what Erika said about raising minimum wage, when I go to the comments, somebody's already said, you Black welfare. Da, 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 da. So now, why would I pile on that, right? Like, you might have some messed up political views, but the racism and sexism and hatred gets there first. So I don't even want to add to that. And I feel like a lot of folks also feel that way. And then I think that we are taught to show unity. We're taught to save face. Black folks in general, what goes on in this house is not just my home, it is all of this. Like we're in a house together. What goes on in this house, and it's also a nonprofit, stays in this house. And so we cannot embarrass each other in front of white folks, because if we think about nonprofit worlds and political, if we start to prove them right, then they're already finding reasons to not fund us, finding reasons to not add to our campaigns, not to vote for us. And if they can sit back and watch us fight amongst ourselves and kill each other off, they will. We see that in inner city violent situations all the time, because there's no such thing as Black on Black violence or anything. You fight who you around. That's how fights happen. But in some areas it's allowed to happen and escalate. In some areas it's shut down and de-escalated. So I say that to say, because of that, we also, when we do get some access to power, Black folks, women, we have to defend it, which makes us defensive, right? And so then when we feel like somebody is attacking that, or somebody might expose us for not being the perfect Black woman or the perfect Black girl in that situation, then we have to get defensive, not be cool with them, not hear what they're saying, shut them down, and in fact, pull up some stuff that they did and show them why they're not perfect, right? And it creates all this tension that is no reason for. We don't have the safety of having calling out conversations, because after it, not only if you and I are in this conversation, I call you out for talking about, for your views on raising the minimum wage. Now I've put us in a situation to expose both of our flaws, and for folks to not fund us, to not vote for us. And this is why Black women shouldn't be in office right there. Look at this one and look at that one and look what she did. So I don't believe that there's enough grace and space for forgiveness for us to do proper calling out right now. And I definitely make space for anybody who would disagree with that, because I think it's necessary. But there is safety. If you think about any relationship, right? If you think about a romantic relationship, it got to be safe enough for me to call you out on your BS for me to do it. I'm not going to do it if you might go upside my head, or if you might not talk to me for 2 weeks, or if you might stop helping me with the bills. So it's not just the responsibility of people to call you out and call you on it. It's also the responsibility of whoever is holding power to not turn it into a weapon when they get called out. I don't believe there's enough safety for us to actively participate in calling out.
I want to go back real quick. You said something earlier about being outed.
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear you correct that you said you were outed? Mm-hmm. Can you talk just a little bit about, like, at 14 or 15 years old, that someone took it upon themselves to name things for you?
You know what? That was a mess. So my my grandmother's auntie, to this day, I don't know who this woman is. My grandmother's auntie, or was sister-in-law by an old marriage or something, worked at my high school. Apparently, she saw me with me and my little high school girlfriend together at a basketball game or something. Told my granny, who told my daddy. Now, this turned into a violent situation. My father, who I didn't grow up getting spankings and whoopings and things like that. My father violently attacked me. I think he thought he was going to beat the gay out of me. And I think it's important to note that it was like he thought about it, because, like I said, it wasn't like he always spanked us or anything like that. So, and it turned into just such a mess that led to me being homeless. It was like, you're going to stop being gay or you can get out my house. And it was like, well, I don't know how to stop being gay. Like, I'm not doing this on purpose to bother you. And so, which led to me being homeless. I eventually ended up, one of my classmates, her auntie, was kind of like, why you ain't never got a rush to get home? Why don't nobody ever be looking for you? Luckily, she inquired and was like, well, you can come stay here. And I was sleeping on a bus. I was going to school before first hour. I got my first hour changed to swim so I could shower in the morning, because I was sleeping on a bus. So I say all this to say, sometimes we think we just talking or gossiping or letting the parents know what's going on or something, and we can be putting kids in a dangerous situation, especially you don't know the reaction that folks might have. And this caused, now me and my daddy cool now. I'm a lot older than 15, but I didn't talk to anybody in my family for 3 years. It was this thing of, if I'm around my siblings, I'm going to turn them gay or whatever. And I left, and I didn't talk to anybody I was related to for 3 years. And it caused these kind of rifts and issues that can never be fully healed. And as time goes on, things happen, right? Eventually, I had my first son, and my dad wanted to know him. And that's kind of how we started having a relationship again. And then there's still like these underlying issues that never get solved. And as that's happening, my parents are getting older. They're also getting sick. And so it's like, well, is this the time to be bringing up, I don't like the fact that you put me out when I was 15 or 16 because you beating cancer now. You know what I mean? So for me, I've carried that as I became a mother. One day I came home. Teenagers are wild. So my son had a sleepover.
Yes.
The basement. I went for a jog, which I'm usually gone for a minute. I used to go for 2 miles and I would go to this coffee shop. So he knew the routine. He knew he had a couple hours. Get halfway down the block. I don't have my earbuds. Come back, open the door. My house smells like the biggest weed party you've ever smelled.
Mm-hmm. Light it up. Mama's gone.
Mama's gone. Now, mind you, it was what I thought, this is what I was asked when I said yes. 3 of his male friends, they have a sleepover. So first of all, I lived in Michigan. in a basement and it was still the heat was on. So if you're smoking in the basement, buy my heater.
You're going to smell it everywhere. The whole house. Let's
I don't know
think
why they
about
didn't
this,
go
young
for a
people.
walk. Think about this, young people. Go for a walk. So I come down the basement. They throw it, still lit.
Now they gonna set your house on fire.
So I find it is not 3 children, it's 5. 2 of which are young girls. They're all the same age. They're all go to school together. And it is my instinct. Where are your parents? I realize I'm looking at the bag that one of the young ladies has spent the night with like all this stuff is in my head. You know what I'm saying? And I want to call her parents and I just pause. I don't know if her parents are like me. I don't know. My son, no, you're going to be in trouble. You might lose your phone. You're not going to get beat up and made homeless. And you know what I mean? So now I'm in this position as a parent and I'm remembering what somebody did to me because they didn't know the dynamics or didn't care about the dynamics in my house when they outed me. And so now I have to talk to them. And I'm like, hey, get home. Text my child when you made it home. I'm not going to call your parents this time. Don't come back over here. So it impacts how I think about households and how I think about exposing other people's business. If somebody has not told you something, it's either they feel like it's none of your business or they don't feel safe to tell you or they're not at a place to tell you yet. Mind your business. It is not going to do anything, even if my parents were not together. That's important for this. My mother handled it well. No issues at all. I said, I got something to tell you. She said, what is it? So I think I like girls. She said, oh, well, some girls are pretty. That don't make you gay. And I was like, well, it's a little deeper than that. And so she said, oh, okay, what do you mean? I said, when I think about intimacy, I think about it with other girls. She said, oh, that is gay. And so she walked out my room and she came back and she said, just so we clear, you're not pregnant. And I was like, I'm not pregnant. That was the end. Me and mom never had another talk about it again, right? And you just don't know. I didn't know she would respond that way. I don't know when I was going to tell her. You never know, but nobody took away my ability to tell her. Like with my father, it was taken away. So I think part of him was also hurt and embarrassed that he had to find out something about his child that way. And then there was a part of him that could not understand that he hadn't created a safe space for me to tell him certain things. So all of that to say, it has impacted my openness with my children, my ability to have conversation with other teenagers and how I respond when I have to check teenage situations in my life.
So are you still in search of forgiveness? Either forgiveness for your heart, or are you looking for an apology? Are you hoping for an apology from him? Because as much as I understand, a lot of time has passed, right? But time don't heal all wounds.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we generationally carry. Even if you are intentionally trying to do something different with your kids, we still unintentionally carry other things because we are not fully healed. And you already know all of that. But also knowing that, you know, same way you talked about, I don't know when I just announced that I'm gay to somebody. Like, you don't just drop in and be like, you know, I used to sleep on the bus.
Right.
Did you forget or something? Because then it feels like you're being combative or whatever, and trying to figure out the way to then have that conversation, but knowing that it might be something that you need. It might be something that he needs in order to, you know, move towards, you know, end of his life, you know, whenever that is, however long time that is, and not have those regrets. Like, how are you navigating that?
You know, I think that as best he could, he's apologized. He's not somebody who, and this is not, I'm not one of the people that's like, oh, you know, he mean well, like about anybody. But apologizing well is a skill and everybody don't possess it. I think that he apologized. My sister, the one who I spoke about, who operates as both an only child in the sibling group, she checked everything. She checked everything. She will be chilling. My dad could be laughing, and she was like, "And I ain't forget you ain't picked me up that one weekend in '96." Just, just in case you thought I forgot.
I don't know why you think everything's so funny.
Right. You know, it's not funny making your daughter wait on the porch after school. So she checked it. She had we were all supposed to go over there, my dad's house. And this is kind of recent, in the last 10 years, recent. Go over there and have this conversation about all of this stuff. She got off work first. She got over there first. By the time we showed up, she had aired it out for everybody. So, and she not combative. She'll be making fool. Yeah, I ain't forgot. And just, so what he said was I could have handled that differently, and I wish I did. And so I think that's as good as we're gonna get. And I think he's apologized in his own ways by being there for me after, once he found out that I had experienced homelessness, once we were back in contact.
So he didn't know.
He didn't know when at the time. No. I think he assumed I went to my mother's, but they had such beef that they were not in communication, but my mother was homeless at the time as well. So he had paid my rent and did these things later in life that I think are part of his way of apologizing. But I can't say, when I think about my parents, I don't even know. I think it's now that I have a son, or I have two sons, but at the time when I thought about this, when I made peace with a lot of stuff they did, and on our birth certificates, for folks who are not as young as my children, like on theirs, it's just kind of your parents' name and stuff like that. On my birth certificate, it got my mama's age, her social security number, like it has a lot of info. And I was looking at it for whatever reason. I think I was updating my passport or something. And I realized I'm my mom's second child. So I have a brother, he passed, but he was a year and a half older than me. My mom was 18 when she had me. And so it started to click how young my parents were. And that they were just like these young Detroiters in the 80s and 90s who was just having babies and figuring it out. They didn't know what they was doing. And I think about how many mistakes I'm aware that I made. I had a lot more access, a lot more support than them, a lot more education, a lot more everything, money, stability. And I still was messing up left to right, with my kids. And I still look at stuff like, oh, you could have handled that better. So I think my being a parent helps me understand the failure of parents. They did, and knowing my grandparents on both sides, they did better than their parents, and I'm doing better than my parents.
I want to thank you for this conversation, which I think has given me 2 whole episodes. So thank you. The only thing we didn't talk about is your books. So I want to make sure I put links in when we post this podcast to all streaming networks, available to anywhere you like to listen. I want to make sure we have links to your books. Before we end, can you just give me a brief thought around, why you decided to become a writer and about these books?
So, when I was younger, my mother read a lot, and she would get these boxes from churches, this free church giveaway box, and it would be those Harlequin romances. And I was reading them as a child. We didn't have TV. She read, I read. We read a lot. My auntie came over one day and was like, "Why are you reading this?" Like I was like an elementary age child, and it was the only book around. And she took me to a bookstore and bought me The Babysitter's Club. I did not know you could buy books. I thought you only I don't know what I thought books came from, like the library, and you could just get them for free at a giveaway. And when I realized what an author was, that there were people who could make their thoughts into a tangible thing you could hold and duplicate and read, I thought that was so powerful. And I didn't even know if I wanted to do it or if I thought it was so mythical that I could never be able to do it. And I grew up and I wrote well, that like English writing, creative writing was always my thing in school. And I started to realize like, you might be able to write something. My first book, I did not mean to write. I was writing to journal through life and get through life. And one day I picked up my stack of journals and was like, this might be a book. Started typing it and it was enough content for a book. My second book was more intentional because I knew what I wanted to talk about. I knew what issues I wanted to come out, and I knew who I was speaking to. So I wrote that with intention. And those are my two books that I published now. I have another book coming out spring of 2024. It's in the editing phase right now. And yeah, I just kind of like intentionally became a writer, but also I didn't write the first book with intention. It just wrote itself.
Okay. And I'm trying, and this is this the first? This is first?
The second book.
This is the second one. Okay. What was the name of the first? Because I think I have that one too.
The Water Girl Drinks Before the Queen.
Yes, I do have that one. And this is just shows that even though I have moved a long time ago, I have yet to unpack all of my books, because I'm like, I have her book already. I bought it and read it, and I'm like, I can't find it because somebody should unpack all their books, or not have so many books. Yep, I have that book. And so yes. And then the second book, which I've been trying to figure out, like on the radio, how to say. So, right. So I'm like, penis and donuts, but not the word penis.
Yeah. So what a woman who interviewed me on something else, she said, D&D, a conjecture collection of how studs ain't it. That's what she said.
All right, D&D, a conjecture collection of how studs ain't that. Yes, yep. Ain't it. Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington, with music, mixing, and editing by Black Gypsy LLC. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy.